What if I told you that no matter how far you've fallen, no matter how deep the hole you're in, there's still a way out? Some people say there's no turning back once you've crossed certain lines, that addiction, betrayal, or loss write the final chapter. But they're wrong, because sometimes grace finds you in the darkest places. Sometimes rock bottom is where real faith begins. This isn't just a story about drugs or bad decisions. This is a story about love, pain, and the God who never gave up. It's about a boy from a broken home, a girl with fire in her eyes, and a path that led through hell and back again. Faith can rescue anyone, even the ones who thought they were beyond saving. This is the story of Jake, and it just might change the way you see redemption.
Jake was born in a small town in Oklahoma into a poor but hard-working family. His mother juggled 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. As for his father, Jake barely remembered him. The man left when Jake was 5. Religion was never part of their home. Church felt like something distant, something other families did, not his. Despite the poverty, Jake's mother and later his stepfather surrounded him with love. They believed in him, celebrated every school achievement, and saved every spare dollar for college, hoping to give Jake a future they never had. He had a full ride waiting for him at the University of Tulsa engineering program, everything paid. All he had to do was apply. But Jake took a different path. By his teens, Jake was desperate to escape the gray monotony of his life. He started hanging around kids who didn't care about school or jobs, but somehow always seemed cool, confident, free. It started with sneaking cigarettes behind school, then alcohol at parties. With every wild night, he felt like he belonged to something, a crew, a brotherhood, where he was finally seen. He laughed at their wild stories and felt for the first time that he mattered. When meth came into the picture, it didn't scare him. It felt like fun. It felt real. His friends said it helped them relax, made life brighter. Jake didn't want to be the scared one. He wanted to belong. He wanted respect. That one choice changed everything. That phase of his life became a blur of endless parties, nights bleeding into dawn, reality lost in a haze. There was laughter, music, the illusion of eternal youth. But behind the fun, warning signs grew, panic attacks, insomnia, the crash after the high. More and more, Jake woke up feeling like he was losing himself. But to admit that was to admit weakness. And Jake wanted to be one of them. At one party, he met Cassie. She was wild and fierce, with green eyes and a laugh that could melt walls. To Jake, she was perfect. They'd spend nights talking, wandering the streets, dreaming about a future. Jake started picturing a life with her, not the kind his parents hoped for, but one filled with passion and freedom. He fell hard, and he believed she was his shot at happiness. Their relationship was intense, screaming fights, followed by tearful laughs. They hitchhiked across the state, crashed in her uncle's old van, split meals and gas money. Some days felt like pure joy, like the time they lay in a field all day, staring at clouds, dreaming of a house with a porch. But there were dark days, too. Jealousy, fights, smashed phones. Jake didn't care. He needed her. She understood him. About 6 months in, when their bond felt unbreakable, Cassie brought heroin to one of their hangouts. She smiled and said, "It's not a big deal. Everyone's doing it. It's even better than meth." Jake hesitated, but he didn't want to disappoint her. He wanted to go all in. That night, he tried heroin for the first time. He remembered how the world turned soft and quiet. The pain was gone. Maybe this was happiness. By 18, meth was old news. By 20, heroin was his everyday reality. His life spiraled out of control like a car with no brakes. He stole small stuff, slept under bridges, and beat up trailers. His eyes dulled. His skin turned gray. He didn't care about anything but the next fix. He was a ghost. He told himself, just one more time, then I'll stop. But the drug always won. Each hit pulled him further from his family, his dreams, himself. Sometimes he stared at his reflection and didn't recognize the person looking back. It felt like someone else was living inside him, someone who couldn't love, feel, or hope. Relatives gave up. Friends vanished. He was sinking, and no one was reaching out. Everything changed the night Cassie overdosed. Jake had injected her himself. He held her hand as she started choking. He screamed for help, but it was too late. That moment shattered him. Everything he thought he knew about love, friendship, freedom, it was all a lie. He was alone, and he couldn't forgive himself. He sobbed on the floor, clutching her cold hand. Her death wasn't a lesson. It was a war, and he was losing. Eventually, the police caught up with him. His so-called friends had been caught with a large stash of drugs and threw his name in to save themselves. He did have a small amount of heroin, but he wasn't a dealer. Still, he went to jail on a plea deal. Another blow. Prison was one of the darkest times of his life. The betrayal cut deep. These were guys he'd shared everything with. Now they'd left him to rot. Inside, he battled withdrawal, guilt, rage. He didn't sleep, just stared at the ceiling, wondering how things could have gone differently. His mind, already wrecked by drugs and Cassie's death, began to fracture. Panic attacks, paranoia. He didn't speak to anyone for weeks. Prison life was gray, brutal, dehumanizing. He felt broken, forgotten. Sometimes he swore he could hear Cassie's voice, calling him in his dreams. Sometimes he wanted to die. But one morning, in total despair, he fell to his knees in his cell and whispered the first words that came to mind. "If you're out there, help me." Nothing happened, but something started to change. After his release, Jake wasn't the same. He didn't go back to the streets, but he didn't know what to do next. He felt lost. He kept asking, "Why me? Why am I still here when others aren't?" He drifted between shelters, slept on couches, went hungry, tried to work, failed. He felt something bigger behind him, but didn't know how to name it. This was the hardest part, trying to find out who he was without drugs. That's when he ended up at a Christian rehab center. He didn't believe in God, didn't believe people could change, but he had no other choice. He got angry during sermons, mocked the Bible, told others, "God forgot about me a long time ago." But one day, he heard a counselor read the parable of the prodigal son from Luke, and it hit him. That was his story. He had wandered, fallen, but the Father was still waiting. He started reading the Bible, not to believe, but to argue, then to understand, then to find something, anything. He was moved by Jesus' words on the cross. "Father, forgive them." He cried the first time he read Psalm 51. He began writing prayers in a notebook, not polished ones, just raw, scared, hopeful. At a group meeting, he spoke up for the first time. He told them about Cassie, about jail, about the mom whose heart he broke. He trembled, but the words came. People listened, some cried. Afterward, 2 guys, Mark and Joel, hugged him, told him they'd been through the fire too. From that day on, they were brothers. Not drug brothers, spirit brothers. They shared scripture, prayed for each other, cooked meals for newcomers. Jake had never imagined friendships like that. He used to laugh at the idea of spiritual brotherhood. Now he cherished it like oxygen. Every chapter, every verse, painted a new world, one where forgiveness was real, where pain had meaning, where love was strength. And suddenly, he realized God hadn't turned away. God had been waiting. Years passed. Jake stayed active in recovery work, but then came a bigger call to open his own recovery center in his hometown, the very place he'd once run from, broken and bitter. Going back wasn't easy. Some remembered him as the promising kid, others as the junkie who dragged Cassie to her death. Some said people like him had no place around youth. But Jake wasn't chasing approval. He was chasing truth. He rented an old building, once a grocery store, and began turning it into a recovery center. Volunteers painted the walls, churches donated furniture, and he wrote the programs at night, consulting therapists and former addicts. He called it Open Doors, a name that meant everything he once needed, a place you could walk into, even straight from the street, prison, or hell. The first to show up was a skinny, wary teen named Elijah. Jake saw his 16-year-old self in him. He didn't give advice. He listened, shared his pain, spoke plainly. And one day, the boy broke down, crying. That was step one. More followed. The center came alive. A year later, Open Doors had grown to 2 neighborhoods. Addicts, families, parents, all came. Jake ran support groups, prayer nights, sports games, and art workshops. He dreamed of building not just recovery, but rebirth. One day, speaking at a local school, Jake spotted a face in the crowd, someone who looked achingly familiar. Afterward, a girl approached him. "You knew my aunt, Cassie. I read your story. Thank you for making sure she didn't just disappear." Jake nodded. He couldn't speak. He just hugged her. Those moments became his reward. He wasn't chasing forgiveness anymore. He lived it. He wasn't building a career. He was building bridges. He knew he couldn't rewrite the past, but he could help rewrite someone else's future.
No matter where you've been, no matter how far you've fallen, grace is still reaching for you. If this story spoke to your heart, leave a comment below. Your words might be the encouragement someone else needs today. And if you carry your own story of pain, of searching, of redemption, we'd be honored to hear it. Share it in the comments or send it to us by email. Your journey could become the light in someone else's darkness. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the notification bell, not just to stay connected, but to help others find the hope you found. Because the more we share these stories, the more we remind the world, no one is ever too lost to be found.